Thank you for listening to the Cosmetics Business Podcast. For early access to episodes, exclusive beauty news stories, analysis, trend reports, and award-winning magazines, subscribe to cosmeticsbusiness.com. That's cosmeticsbusiness.com.
Hello and welcome to the Cosmetics Business Podcast, a monthly roundup of the biggest stories, trends and talking points in beauty. Coming to you from our London Bridge studio, my name is Julia Wray and I'm sitting here with fellow cosmetics business journalists
Amanda Pauley
and
Alessandro Carrara.
And in today's episode, we are going beyond the headlines to take on the biggest stories of the past month. From how smelling expensive is trending in the shadow of the recent child labour scandal to Glossier's backtracking on its vegan balm reformulation. And make sure to stay to the end where we reveal our favourite new beauty launches this month. So in no particular order, Alessandro, maybe you can start us off.
Absolutely. My topic is on why people really want to smell expensive in 2024. So on Perfume Talk, How to Smell Expensive has 28.3 million views. And people are searching for things like how to smell like a rich millionaire or smelling like old money or generational wealth, to more specific trends like how to smell like a mob wife. And I guess to really open it up straight away, why do you think people want to smell expensive this year?
I mean, I guess I would say, why wouldn't they want to smell expensive? But I feel like this is all coming off of that whole trend towards quiet luxury that, everybody wants to be a little bit more discreet in the way that they showcase, their wealth and how they look. And I guess, it's about whispering rather than shouting. I don't know about you guys, but when you think about wealth and fragrance, you kind of think of that slightly, Ivana Trump, 80s, big hair, big fragrances. So you think Poison by Dior or maybe Giorgio Beverly Hills, Obsession by Calvin Klein, which are very big, punchy. They were often like Oriental scents. And that's really changed nowadays. It's the movement towards scents that sort of whisper rather than shout. I always think of like Fleur's Missing Person, which is obviously hugely trending on TikTok at the moment. But the idea with that is that this kind of cozy familiarity and comfort. And it's very personal. It's intensely personal. It's so different from that kind of walk into the room, kapow, and you're just there and everyone's staring because they can smell you.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say quite luxury because we had the whole saga of Succession and how much that blew up, and the Roy family that the show's about, that was all about quite luxury. And within that as well, there was so much fandom about seeing beauty products in their cupboards and people going on a search about it. It wasn't in your face, but you could see that they had like the highest end stuff. But I also think as well, like it's fueled a bit by dupe culture as well, because Baccarat Rouge 540 just gets duped all the time. I see so much stuff on TikTok about it, and it's because I feel like so many of those videos about how to smell expensive, everyone's like, I always get stopped in the street for wearing this perfume, and it's always Baccarat Rouge 540.
Yeah.
And I know when M&S, they had like a dupe, I think it was last year, and it sold out immediately. Just through some of these. So I think it is that thing of you want people to stop you on the street and be like, you smell amazing. What is it? And it's that cult status of saying, it's this. It's that really premium luxury fragrance that people know of the minute you say the name. So yeah, I'm not surprised, to be honest. And I'm not surprised by some of the fragrances that are on that list.
Absolutely. I think there's that thing as well of, well, possibly, and that was a really interesting example, Maison Francis Kurkdjian's Baccarat Rouge 540, because it is one of those ones that I guess it was quite indie, and now, as you say, it is that scent. And I feel like a little bit with this, this idea of smelling expensive, there is also an idea of smelling exclusive, which is that you want people to ask you what it is, but you also don't want people to be able to identify either. So I don't know about you guys, but when you're on the tube or a bus or whatever it might be, and you smell like a whiff of Angel or Chloe, your Davidoff Cool Water, just ones that you know because they're ones you grew up with, they're popular for a reason, they're great scents. At the same time, you're a little bit like, I don't really want people to be able to identify what I'm wearing very easily. I want it to be a bit more mysterious. So there is that idea there. And I do wonder with that one, with the Baccarat Rouge, whether that will eventually go the same way. It will become so ubiquitous. I mean, it's a great scent, but it will become so well known and ubiquitous that it maybe will lose that slightly smelling expensive edge.
Yeah, I think so, because people are moving away from the big blockbusters, like you say, because they don't want people to necessarily know what they're wearing straight away, but they want people to stop and be like, wow. Yeah, I think the thing with Baccarat Rouge is it's become cult status as an indie fragrance, but not everybody can afford to wear it. It's very, very expensive. So I think with the dupe culture kind of keeping it in that spotlight, because it makes it accessible for those who can't afford the original thing. Yes.
Yeah.
But it will be interesting. Like Juliet Has a Gun is another one that I think is that kind of indie fragrance, which kind of came out of nowhere. A few people were wearing it. And like you say, it's that thing that it's not a big blockbuster, so it piques attention. But then if everyone doesn't want to smell like everybody else, will these fragrances go through peaks and troughs then?
Just on price, we are in a cost of living crisis at the moment. So how much would you guys spend? Like, what is the most you would spend on a perfume to tap into this smelling expensive trend?
I mean, that's a great question. I love perfume, but at the same time, I also like being able to pay my bills. So I personally kind of tap out at about 150.
Yeah, I'm like J. Ray. I'm a big fragrance person. Like I told you earlier, AC, I have like 12 on the go at the moment, which is insane.
Ooh, what's your favourite?
Well, Coco Mademoiselle is like one of my favourites.
Classic.
And Glossier You, I think, are like standard every day.
I've got that as well. And I swear to God, like so many colleagues and people go, oh, you're wearing Glossier You. And to be fair, I actually don't mind that. I said earlier on that, I don't want people to know what I'm smelling of. That might be one of the occasions where I'm actually like, yes, I am one of those people.
People always stop me when I wear that. But also Prada Paradox, I just started wearing that recently, and I've had lots of comments about that. But also there's a indie brand called Rose that has a fragrance called I Am Dance, and that one gets stopped a lot. And I don't think it's necessarily as big as some of the others.
I think, Alessandro, how about you? Do you have a...
I've been, I've been struggling to find a fragrance that really speaks to me, but I don't think I'm prepared to drop. I'm close to £100 on a fragrance, really. Maybe 50 to 60 tops. But maybe I haven't found something yet that really speaks to me, because one of the things with smelling expensive, one of the scent trends is that a lot of the fragrances focus on like smoky, woody tobacco scents, which I really don't vibe with. What do you guys feel about that?
Well, I think it's really interesting that Amanda mentioned earlier Succession and Logan Roy, because as soon as you mentioned Logan Roy and Brian Cox, I just had this mental image of sort of leather sofas and that whiskey smelling, that cigar smoke. And I do think there is that link as well, kind of these cues that I guess we associate with rich men being kind of, but they also do make for nice fragrances. I don't think that we're necessarily talking about a fragrance smelling exactly like a stogie cigar or something, but rather like just little hints and little kind of. And again, that whispering aspect, a very good perfumer will be able to get these subtle indications that make you think certain things without necessarily hitting you around the face with its leatheriness.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not too big on like musky smells and that, but there's a complete market for it. I think Julia's right. It's how the perfumers formulate it so that when you smell it, it triggers a memory in your mind, and hopefully triggers a good memory. Because I think most of the perfumes that I've bought, they've made me think of like holidays, or smells of holidays and things like that. And that's why I've bought them. But I'm not surprised like musky, those kind of masculine kind of undertones and notes are popular.
I think people appreciate the sort of sophistication and are sort of perceived as quite a luxurious thing. And I don't know why I can't just get behind it.
But you know what you can do, Alessandro? So this is one of my favourite things about the ways in which the fragrance market has progressed is, for example, sampling, so that somebody can send you a pack. For example, you can have a couple of vials, and you can try, you pay a certain amount for that pack to be sent to you. You try a vial. If you like something, you can get that money that you've spent on that tester set off of your final purchase. So there's lots of ways and means, especially with online, that you can test. You might not be able to find these fragrances in every store across the country, but you can go online, you can find these fragrances which are maybe a little bit more exclusive, and that you wouldn't want to drop. You wouldn't want to drop 200 quid even if you had it on something which you've not tried, if it's a bit of a shot in the dark. But, you know, with all these ways and means around trying out things, you can really work out what suits you, and then you can make that investment.
Interesting. I tried really, really hard to get a sample of Elon Musk's burnt hair perfume.
Oh, God.
Do you literally go up and knock on Elon's door?
But maybe he was onto something, because he obviously focused on very smoky smells with that sort of perfume. So,
But it was burnt hair.
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever smelled literally burnt hair in real life?
Yeah, I have. When I'm cooking sometimes.
Yeah, oh God. I was going to say, like, I'm from the countryside, so it's like farriers and stuff like that. But yeah, it's an interesting smell. It's not necessarily unpleasant, but I wouldn't want to smell like it. Firstly, because I think people be worried, right?
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? It makes me kind of think back to the days before like straighteners existed and everyone was ironing their hair, and you sort of think like, that must have been kind of what it smelled
like. An
like.
actual iron.
Yeah, people used to iron their hair before straighteners existed to make it, because my mum was a mod. And that's what they used to do. So you'd put your hair on the ironing board and then put a tea cloth over it and then iron it with the iron
it's
to get your
such
hair
a risky
straight.
business. I mean, the amount of burns she must have got on her ears.
But she said that used to stink, like probably stink.
So, I mean, obviously, with all of these kind of elixirs, intense versions, all of these things that enable people to, you know, smell as if consumers want to smell the value of the scent, you know, and so this kind of strengthen it. But conversely, there is a flip side to all of this. And I guess this takes us into our second topic of today, which, Amanda, can I turn over to you for that?
Yes, so there's a bit of a dark cloud looming over the luxury perfume market at the moment, and this is due to a new documentary which alleges that some luxury fragrances have been linked to child labour. BBC World Service Eyes film, which is called Perfume's Dark Secret, claims that during the summer of 2023, its investigative arm witnessed children aged between 5 and 15 picking jasmine flowers in Egypt. The documentary shows children picking the ingredient throughout the night and alleges they made on average $1 a day. In Egypt, it's illegal for children under the age of 15 to work between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. But I think the thing that's really kind of rocked the beauty industry during this is that the BBC alleges that these ingredients were sent to factories that supply scents for global brands. And this included L'Oreal's Lancôme Idol Intense and Estee Lauder's owned Erin Beauty's Ikat Jasmine and Limon de Sicilia fragrances. Egypt supplies about half of the global supply chain of jasmine, and the BBC said that it's one of the most valuable ingredients used in popular perfumes by billion-dollar beauty brands. Naturally, these big brands have responded, but I think before I kind of get into that, I was just wondering what you guys made of this news, because obviously it's quite shocking.
Yeah, so I guess a little part of me is unsurprised, because I feel like every couple of years there will be something that pops its head up negatively, obviously, with regards to things like child labour, even slave labour, or, you know, low wages, for example, when it comes to resources that we use in our industry. So, for example, whether it's sugarcane, whether it's mica, in mines, which obviously is goes into pigments. So there are, every now and then there will be something of a scandal in this respect. So I guess it's not hugely surprising. But I guess what it really stresses is the need for really frequent, and I mean like super frequent, but also thorough auditing of supply chains, especially when you're talking about anything from an area where it is a developing region. So, and you have greater instances of absolute poverty, and it is more tempting for a parent, you know, with lots of children with absolutely zero money to say, all right, you go out and do this, come with me and do this. So, you know, you have obviously, you mentioned Egypt and jasmine, but, you know, for example, you have lang-ylang and vanilla from Madagascar as well. You know, you've got mica mined in Africa and, you know, other regions in the world as well. So it's just the onus is on the industry and Finnish companies as well as the supply companies to really look into their supply chains.
I think it's absolutely horrific. But my real concern is that people are likely going to forget about this in a month or two. And again, it'll become one of those things that we'll recall, be like, oh yeah, this happened. But
yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I mean, there's a couple of things that I was just mentioning there, I don't, how many of us listening to this podcast right now have genuinely, unless they're working in the industry in kind of sustainability and social responsibility, supply audits, how many of them have actually genuinely thought about those topics since they came out a couple of years ago? So it's, I don't know, it's, you know what, I do feel sorry for companies, for businesses, because it's not a simple task. There's lots of issues to keep on top of. Obviously, you have things like child labour, slave labour. And you also things like palm, for example, linked to deforestation.
Yes.
And you've got all these things, and you're talking about these tiny small holdings. You're talking about, and it's so far upstream, and it involves so many different people. So it's a bit of a hydra, really, to try and keep an eye on.
But it's not like these companies don't have the funds to keep an eye on it and the resources to. So where is the misstep? Is it, are they telling a blind eye, or is it?
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, when it comes to auditing, you've got actually a lot of set codes which exist already, which people can go to. So, for example, you've got Business Social Compliance Initiative. You've got, I hope I'm saying this right, SMETA, stands for SEDEX Members Ethical Trade Audit. And you also have workplace conditions assessments. And a lot of these, for example, can be done with regards to things like the textiles industry, factory work, but also farming. So there are ways and means of checking. There are these systems in place that enable you to get a third party to check, and a reputable third party at that. But yeah, it's, I don't know. I feel like what we get a lot of is companies, when this happens, they're washing their hands and saying things like, oh, we'll act immediately. We take conditions like this really seriously. But yeah, how are they doing that? Are they investigating? Are they simply stopping using that particular, or they're putting pressure on the fragrance houses they work with to stop working with that particular entity? Is that what they're going to do? Because that doesn't solve the problem. It just moves the problem somewhere else, right? Somewhere that's not them. So you're washing your hands of it, but you're not solving it. And it's the L'Oreals and Estee Lauders of the world that set the budgets for these things. So if they don't look at that and don't look at that seriously, then actually they're a little bit complicit.
Yeah, traceability is like completely the issue. And obviously L'Oreal has naturally responded, and they responded quite quickly to this documentary coming out and the BBC making its claims. In their statement, L'Oreal said it is, quote, deeply committed to protecting human rights. And it said it has always, quote, acted immediately if it identifies any problems in the supply chain. What they said was this, and this is direct quotes, and this is exactly what we are currently doing in Egypt, where we indirectly source a small percentage of the jasmine used in some of our products. Thanks to our ongoing monitoring process, in October 2023, after the last harvest, and before the BBC reached out to us, we first identified potential human rights issues, including child labour. Consistent with our human rights commitments, we decided to take immediate action. As a result, since these potential issues first surfaced, we have worked to put concrete actions in place ahead of the next jasmine harvest in June. What this has included, which I'll just paraphrase from the statement, is that they've helped to set up a coalition in partnership with the Egyptian government, fragrance houses and other industry partners, which is being led by the Fair Labour Association and the International Labour Organization. L'Oreal also added that it was, quote, very disappointed that the BBC chose not to include its concrete actions in Egypt, which we had already started to implement before they first contacted us. So it's interesting because they've responded quite in depth and have claimed that they sent information to the BBC, and they allege that the BBC did not respond to it. But this is very different to Estee Lauder's response, which was very simply, they told the BBC, we believe the rights of all children should be protected, and we have contacted our suppliers to investigate this very serious matter. So two very different responses from the two big beauty powerhouses that I mentioned in the documentary. So what do you guys think of that?
I mean, that's fascinating, isn't it? Actually, kudos to L'Oreal, because it really does sound like they are making change, real grassroots change there, putting pressure on the government there. So it sounds like L'Oreal is doing all of the right things and isn't being evasive. And it is a shame if that's the case, and the BBC knew that wasn't included in the finished report. I mean, it's an interesting space with fragrance generally with regards to natural ingredients like jasmine, for example, because you do have a lot of issues surrounding this. So, for example, as we're talking about now, but then you also have a lot of pressure on, for example, with climate change, is putting pressure on harvests, the quality of harvests, the consistency. And, it's always going to be more expensive than some of the synthetic alternatives that are out there. Obviously, they're not exact like for likes. So there's issues as well with allergens. So, for example, jasmine is an allergen as well, and it has been restricted in perfumery due to skin sensitizing effects as well. So obviously, we don't necessarily want to move away from natural materials, but there is a lot of pressure there as well.
Yeah, it's very interesting response from the two powerhouses. One thing I will say is I actually visited a L'Oreal event in Paris earlier this year, and it was all about their luxury fragrances and how they're kind of moving forward. And they are investing heavily into green tech to try and find synthetic options to these kind of core ingredients. So they're obviously making moves in the right way in some areas, but it's very difficult because obviously this has slipped through the net. But yeah. I appreciate a deeper statement from them, a bit more thorough. It'll be interesting to see what follows on from this if L'Oreal keeps, the consumers and the industry up to date with what's going on with this, because I think follow-ups on this issue is going to be crucial.
But then at the same time, if they knew in October, why weren't they completely transparent then? Why did they wait until...
I'm assuming it's because they didn't realise the BBC were investigating into it. And they wouldn't necessarily... I think companies, they talk about their uncomplicatedly successful sustainability journeys. It's a sustainability journey as well in its own way, but it is... it's coming from a place of this is a negative, this is something we'd want to avoid, but this is how we're working to better the situation. Whereas really, I think they tend to talk to the press and they put their press releases out more about the happier things as it were. But the fact that they are doing something about this is to be praised.
No, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
100%.
And the choice in the end, what to do, whether, to look into this in more depth, whether to sever ties with suppliers, or whether to, integrate more of a synthetics route as well. It is up to companies. I think that simply moving away from naturals won't resolve the issue. It'll just take jobs away from the pickers. And we want to keep these people in business. We want to keep them feeding their families. And it also doesn't really help the industry because it would offer a blander palette if we didn't have access to these ingredients. So I think the onus is on the industry to just audit, do what L'Oreal are doing there, because it sounds like they really are on the right track. And also just to analyse their roles as well. Does their pricing make sense?
Yes, because, some of these fragrances, they're very expensive. They're in the prestige premium sector. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And their profits will come at a cost, and this can be the cost. So I'm going to hop on to the topic of Glossier bringing back its original balm.com formula. Have you guys tried balm.com?
No, I have not.
No, I've never tried it. I heard of it. I think I got onto the Glossier bandwagon a bit late because I thought Boy Brow was their ultimate hero. But obviously looking into this, it's actually balm.com. So yeah, I'm very intrigued to kind of learn a bit more about this.
Yeah, so I have used the original formula of balm.com, and it is absolutely every bit as good as everybody says. So to give the full story, balm.com, it is, as you say, Amanda, one of the brand's cult products. It originally launched in 2014, but it was reformulated in 2023 to become vegan. So to achieve this first reformulation, the brand swapped out a couple of major ingredients, so beeswax and lanolin. And if you haven't heard of it, lanolin comes from sheep's wool and is obviously not vegan either, any more so than beeswax. So the revamped version replaced these with castor jelly, which is a humectant, and synthetic beeswax, and also threw in shea butter and safflower oil too. But a lot of Glossier fans, it turns out, were not impressed. So reviews on its website accused it of being drying instead of hydrating the new formula. And one user described it as weak, which is so damning, isn't it? Weak formulation.
Oh, no.
But Glossier, it's now bowed to this kind of consumer pester power to bring it back to its original formulation. So it tested the waters recently with a strawberrybalm.com in April in the original formulation before rolling it back out across the full lineup. And if you go online now, there is just one berrybalm.com being sold with a vegan formula, and this is going at half price of £7, which suggests that it might be undergoing something of a phase out. So what do we think about this story? Should brands be backpedaling on their vegan values just because consumers prefer their old formulations? And, you know, looking at this is pester power at play here. Like, so to what extent do consumer pressure campaigns like this actually work as well?
Oh, it's a chicken and egg situation, isn't it? Because it's consumer experience versus ethical standpoints. It's very tricky. I've never heard of someone U-turning like this. So is it a first in the industry? I don't know.
So I don't know whether it's a first, but another company to whom something like this happened was Bite Beauty. So the lip product company. Now Bite Beauty reformulated its lip products in 2020, much to become vegan, a little bit like balm.com. And its parent company, Kendo, actually closed it in 2020. So only its Lip Lab stores are still open. And many on Reddit, for example, suggested that the reformulation was in part to blame. And although, you know, to be fair, I can't imagine that lockdown was particularly good to a pure play lip brand. But on Reddit as well, we had comments saying at the time of its reformulation, people were saying things like, if it contains soy or it contains coconut, I can't use that because I'm allergic to that. So by trying to bring in something which I guess is more inclusive, like veganism, in other ways, they're shutting other people out. Although, to be fair, lanolin also can be an allergen for some people. So it swings and roundabouts, really. But yeah, I guess brands maybe overestimate how many beauty fans are diehards when it comes to buying vegan.
I really can weigh in on this because I honestly think that, especially with certain creams or scents, you actually grow extremely attached to them. They're a big source of comfort. And I remember with the Body Shop, they had an argan oil body butter. And it is, to this day, my absolute favourite body cream of all time. They updated it when the brand went fully vegan, and it is just not the same. And it's really tricky because it's for a really good cause, but they've now lost me as a customer. And I genuinely go on eBay and buy original versions that have the non-vegan version.
Yeah. You are that guy. But you're absolutely right. People can tell the difference. And it's interesting because the vegan cosmetics market, I looked into this, so it's worth nearly 18 billion, or it was in 2023, globally. But only 3% of the global population are in fact vegan. This is a bit of oldish data, so I was trying to find some newer stuff. But in 2019, Cosmetify found that 39% of women who only buy vegan beauty products are not actually vegan. But what's interesting, so you go, oh yeah, that's great. But what's interesting about this is it potentially means that their ethics are not set in stone. So they will buy vegan if they prefer vegan, or if it's the same as an old formulation that they like. But if they don't like it, then the onus isn't necessarily ethically on them. If you are a vegan, a diehard vegan, you only eat plant-based foods, you don't wear leather, etc., then you are going to stick with a vegan formulation come hell or high water. If you just buy vegan cosmetics out of preference, but you're not vegan, you can flip-flop. And I think this is probably what's happened in this case.
Yeah, efficacy is top dog, isn't it? That's
Absolutely.
what it's showing. It'll be interesting to see what the sales are off the back of this, and whether the original becomes a bestseller for the brand again and then remains a top seller, because if there was such demand, it'll be interesting to see if the demand matches the sales. Because
absolutely. What's interesting is, again, on the website, the Glossier website, if you go onto it and you pretend to be a undercover customer, you can see there's a lot of responses, mostly positive to the new formulations coming back. A lot of the chat underneath the drop about it kind of coming back out was really positive. People were saying, really, somebody put, I will immediately place an order for 3 original balm.coms if they drop. Somebody put, my lips are crying. Nothing has satisfied me since he's changed. So clearly, consumers, let's see, absolutely, they vote with their wallet, but it sounds like they're quite enthused about this. And I'm not a formulator. None of us are formulators here, but I got in touch with a formulator. So Tumi Soroku is a cosmetic scientist, and she's a creative director of Beauty Science UK. So, I asked her, is there a difference? Why is this tangible for people? And she basically explained that, both lanolin and beeswax offer this extreme hydration and have the ability to soften the skin, and it just makes them great products for lip products. And again, I asked her, what would you do if you were reformulating as vegan? How would you make sure that you wouldn't have to backtrack again? And she went, it's nearly impossible. So there are no direct replacements for these ingredients. To have that same effect, that same occlusiveness, that shine that you get from lanolin. So for example, she did say that there are waxes such as candelilla wax, which could be kind of considered a replacement. It's got similar hydrocarbon and ester content to lanolin, for example, but it doesn't have the fatty acid component, which is apparently all important. But blending it with soybean, cottonseed, sunflower or safflower obviously being in the revamped vegan formulation, which was then backtracked, can have somewhat of a replication for the long-lasting occlusion and richness that both beeswax and lanolin can provide. So, guys, if we're going to be good to the animals, if we're going to go vegan, we might just have to, as consumers, suck it up a bit.
Interesting. I think with this story as well, it's so interesting, just the power of community.
Oh, yeah.
And how much the internet can turn the tide on what a brand does. I was thinking earlier, and it reminds me of like a really retro example, and this is from the food world, but it was, do you remember when Cadbury's axed the Whisper Bar in 2003 because of just dire sales? And it got brought back in 2007 as a limited edition because there was like a 14,000 strong Facebook group.
Bring Back Whisper Bar.
Yeah, Bring Back Whisper group,
it.
who were just hammering the company, being like, you've got to bring it back.
You know what? If
I'd
have known of its existence, I'd have been there with my placard. That sounds,
But it's so funny. They caved in to the Facebook group, brought it back, said, it's limited edition. But then by the next year in 2008, it was permanent again, and it still exists now. So it just highlights the power. And you think back then as well, there wasn't as many social media channels as there are now. Like Facebook was obviously like the ruler, but we have Instagram now, TikTok, Pinterest, you name it.
Could you imagine TikTok on a campaign to get their chocolate back?
So it's interesting because it's like, I wonder to what point it is that it makes a company cave and go, okay, let's bring this back, because I want to start one right now. I would like The Ordinary to bring back its serum foundation, which it discontinued last year.
Because I know, that was gutting.
Honestly, best lightweight serum foundation ever for holidays. And I was so gutted. And I remember when they announced the news, I went straight online and it was sold out.
Oh,
gone.
no, you didn't manage to stock up.
If Deciem are listening...
Hi, Deciem.
That's the one I would like to bring back, because I understand why they closed the makeup in entirety, but that serum foundation, even if it's just limited edition, just bring it back just for a bit.
Why was it discontinued?
I just don't think the makeup arm of the business was making as much money as the skincare side.
Yeah, they were quite open about the fact that it was popular. It was just not enough to sustain it.
Yeah, but
small vocal community. Get
But also, is it that thing of like nostalgic about something, and that kind of, it's that exclusiveness of being able to get something that doesn't exist anymore? Because I just wonder whether the popularity of balm.com will sustain after all this hype about it coming back.
You know what? If I hadn't used it, I would say I don't know. But it's a great product. It really is. And it is one that I this is going to sound really disgusting, I would have gone back and probably got the vegan formulation and gone, oh, this is not quite as good. But I've had that little, that little tube since before the reformulation. So I am really disgusting. I'm totally sorry. Do not be like me. It will probably make you sick. But I do have my little original tube of lanolin containing balm.com, which is probably needs to be torched. It's really well past its sell by date. But it's a great product.
I'm in your camp, Julia, because I've got a festering pout of Body Shop stuff that is way before the reformulation as well. So.
Real relic of times gone by.
But I can't. It is nostalgia. It really is.
Yeah.
Honestly, sometimes I will just open them and smell them, and it will take me back to like a simpler, happier time for some reason.
But do check the use by date, Alessandro,
Yeah.
because that is important.
I'm going to be buried with this stuff.
He's like, I'll die on this hill, quite literally.
But that's what I mean. Nostalgia really sells.
It does.
It's like everyone just loves thinking back. There's just something about it.
You don't know what you've got until it's gone.
Yes, exactly. So The Ordinary, please.
Yes. You've heard it here.
I think sticking. It's tricky. I think sticking to your guns is probably the right thing to do, and putting up with it, because they may have lost me as a customer, but they might gain a whole new fandom that appreciates this reformulated version.
Absolutely. And there was obviously a reason they did it in the first place. And if you are going to backtrack and flip-flop on your ethical goals because of pester power, did you really mean, were you really serious about it in the first place? So this is Cosmetics Business Picks, the section of the podcast where we share our favourite products of the past month. Alessandro, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So my pick for this month isn't a traditional skincare or makeup product. It's actually from a brand called VLFR, and they've launched a new mirror and makeup mixing palette hybrid. It's called the Object de Réflexion, and it was launched to celebrate its 3rd anniversary. So the item, which it functions as a collectible art piece. It doesn't actually contain like a traditional mirror. Instead, it uses like a highly reflective surface that like creates a golden reflection. So it's really, really cool. And it caught my eye because honestly, it looks like a really cool coin you could like pick up in a video game. It's just this beautiful object.
Shiny object that's drawing you in.
100% get that like it would be something you would like want to display as like an art piece. But also you can use it to like put your makeup on. So like cool function.
Oh, I love those. Those are the best. So I've chosen the new Blue Gentian and Edelweiss Contouring Eye and Lip Cream from Weleda, which is part of its new range featuring those 2 ingredients. So the positive effects of Edelweiss include bacteriostatic, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory properties. So it's a real skincare hero. Blue Gentian, meanwhile, is said to be rich in anthocyanins that activate the skin's metabolism. And if anything, my skin needs anything, it's just metabolism activating. So it's quite a good one for me. And this new cream is said to diminish deep wrinkles and dark circles. Again, both of which I'd very much like to blast. So I'm wearing some on my lip contour at the moment too. It's a pleasant feeling product. It comes in an aluminium tube as well, which, as everybody knows, is endlessly recyclable, which is always a good thing and fits in nicely with Weleda's sustainable ethos there. Amanda?
So my pick is from dry skin body care specialist E45, who has just broken into the sun care category with a range designed for sensitive skin, especially those with eczema. I love both the Sun Care Sensitive Lotion and the Sun Care Sensitive Spray products because they're really lightweight so they don't clog your pores. They've got special filters that are known not to irritate sensitized skin. They're fragrance-free, but they also give really good coverage. And I know this because I was in Singapore not that long ago and it was 42 degrees and I was fine.
Wow.
But also I love it because they leave your skin feeling really moisturized as well. It feels more like putting a body cream on, because I think when you've got sensitive skin and you're using sun cream, sometimes they can feel quite claggy, quite heavy, and then sometimes that can really exacerbate the issue. So a really exciting new launch from that brand.
So is this, I feel like a lot of companies, is this the first time a big company has brought out a sunscreen range for atopic skins and for eczema skins?
I'm not sure 100%, but
It's not usual, is it?
What E45 said is that there's a lot of, just to paraphrase them, there's a lot of big players in the industry, but there's not many who are doing something dedicated to this group. Because, it's the same with skincare, like this sensitized skins can't use certain ingredients, so it's very, very interesting. And I think it's a really great move by the brand, and it's for all the family as well. So there's kids and stuff for adults as well.
Nice. Well done, E45. That's all now for the Cosmetics Business Podcast. Thank you, listeners, for joining us this week. If you've enjoyed this episode, please rate, leave a comment, share and subscribe to the Cosmetics Business Podcast so you never miss an episode. Join us next time when we tackle the biggest stories and trends in beauty. And in the meantime, make sure to subscribe to cosmeticsbusiness.com for all of your beauty industry news and analysis. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.